What's up, everybody? Mr. Jones here with you. Right here in this video, we're going to be doing some more factoring. Okay, this time we're going to be factoring a trinomial. Okay, a trinomial means it's a polynomial with three terms, like this one. Okay, we're going to be factoring these. Okay, we're going to be using a strategy called Tic Tac Toe, and it's just as fun as the actual game, which is great. So what we're doing when we've talked a lot about factoring. What we're doing when we actually factor something is we are, again, kind of like reversing the distribution process, okay, of different like groups of terms, okay? And so for this one, right, this, again, factoring a trinomial is an example of reversing the FOIL process, right? FOIL is what we would use to like multiply these, right? And again, you should be reminded of that at this point because that's an Algebra 1 topic. But again, if we distribute x times x, x squared, that would be the f first in FOIL, that acronym, right? So we multiply the first term times the first term, x squared, and then x times -3 is the outer two terms. That would give you -3x, and then 7 times x would be the inner terms, and that would be +7x, okay? And then 7 times -3 would be the last two terms multiplied, and that would give you a -21, okay? And so here is my group when I FOIL, and again, as always, these middle two terms are going to be like terms that I can add or combine together, right? So I would do that, and I'll get x squared plus 4x minus 21, okay? And so again, that would be the answer to this being FOILed, okay? And so what we're going to be doing is reversing this process of taking a trinomial and getting the answer as, right, back to how it would be before we FOILed it, right, as two binomials, okay? And there's so many different strategies, and to be honest, as a teacher, I've taught lots of different strategies, okay? And this year, I think I found one that is simple and can be used for every type of trinomial, okay? Because that's often the challenge is different trinomials often mean we have to use a different strategy, okay? But this is going to be a good one, okay? But first, before I get into the strategy, I need to go into a little bit about these signs in here because that's going to be important to interpret first, and then we'll get into the actual strategy, okay? So let me erase and we'll get into it. All right, so as I was saying, before we get into the strategy, let's look at these, just this one thing I want you to see and notice with the signs, okay? Because that's really going to help us kind of figure out first, if we can answer figure out what the signs are going to be first, it's really going to help us in our process as we do that, okay? So the first thing, okay, I just have three different, this would be the original question, this would be the answer, right, for three of these, okay? And so the one thing I want you to notice, right, so our standard form of a quadratic would be ax squared plus bx plus c, right? So that's our standard form of a quadratic. And the thing that we look for on this step is that sign of the c value, okay? That's really going to be helpful for me to look at here first, okay? Because that's going to tell me a lot about what my answer is going to look like in these groups, okay? So the first thing, if, like this was the example I just showed you, okay? If this sign is a minus, okay, if the sign of the c value is a minus, okay, that means that in your two answer groups, the signs are going to be two different signs. One's going to be a plus and one's going to be a minus, okay? So if that's a minus there, one's going to be a plus, one's going to be a minus. You know that, okay? So it's really helpful to notice, right? Because like the original problem, it'll say, okay, factor this trinomial, and it'll show you this, okay? By looking at what that sign is, you at least are going to know, okay, that sign, these signs are going to be this and this, okay? And then you can figure out the terms from there, okay? So that's if the c term is a minus, the signs are going to be different, okay? But if the c sign, if that sign is a plus, okay? Like you notice I have two examples of it as a plus, okay? That's going to be a little bit different, okay? If the sign there is a plus, you have two possibilities. And that's where the other sign comes in, right? This guy, okay? So if the sign is a plus, you look at what the first sign is, okay? So you look at what the sign of the b number is, okay? And that's going to tell you, okay? So, but either way, if it's a plus, here, if that c sign's a plus, your two signs are going to be the same as each other. They're either going to be both pluses or they're going to be both minuses, okay? And so we look, right, and that's when we look at the sign of the b term, okay? So if the b term is also a plus, okay, both of the signs in your groups are going to be pluses, okay? So if both signs are pluses, then both signs in your groups are also going to be pluses. Great, okay? But if your C sign is a plus and then your B sign is a minus, okay, so it goes minus then plus, then look, both your signs here are going to be minuses, okay? And so why does that happen? Why does that happen? Well, again, if we're thinking FOIL, right? FOIL, we would FOIL these two groups to get this as an answer, right? So this would end up as a plus because, right, first, outer, inner, last. If you multiply these two last terms together, -3 times -3, guess what? You'd end up with +9, right? That a negative times a negative gives you a positive. Okay, so that's why that happens and why it's important to look for the signs. But it's super helpful to us as we factor if you notice that first. Okay, again, just summarizing. If the C sign's a minus, it's going to be two different signs. One's a plus, one's a minus. Okay, if the C sign is a plus, then you look back at your B sign. Okay, and if that's also a plus, then both signs are going to be pluses in your two groups. Okay, but if your C sign's a positive and then the B is a negative, then they're both minuses in here. Okay. So that can be a lot to keep track of. There's just 3 different scenarios, okay? And again, as I go through these, I'll remind you of them, but that's going to be super helpful to you as you see that and observe that early on, because that'll help take care of a difficult thing when it comes to this. Okay, then all you'll have to worry about is finding the right numbers and terms to go in here. Okay, so let me erase here. We'll actually get into this process of the tic-tac-toe method of factoring, and then I'll do some examples in another video. Okay, I've got example 1 up here. It just says factor the trinomial, okay? And again, when it says factor the trinomial, you know that, okay, your goal is to take this group right here, these 3 terms, you're going to take these 3 terms and you're going to make your answer 2 binomial groups, or just 2 terms, right? And so like I just described, the first thing you want to look for here is your signs in here, okay, your signs in your groups, okay? So if you look at the signs in our groups, again, the first one we look for is that C sign, that C number right here. And that is a plus. And again, what does that tell me? Well, that tells me that it's going to be, both the signs in these groups are going to be the same, okay? And then, but I have to look at the other sign to tell me exactly what that C, or what the signs in here are going to be. And because that is also a plus, both the signs in your groups are going to be pluses, okay? And that is super helpful to know, okay? So you know it's going to be something plus something, something plus something, okay? And now, where does this tic-tac-toe board come in, okay? And that's going to help us figure out what numbers are going to go in here, okay? So here's this process, okay? So in this first tic-tac-toe, this first row right here is going to be just all your terms that are in here, okay? But we don't go right in order. Go x squared, 7x, and 12, okay? The first term, first box here is x squared, okay? Just your A term right here, okay? Your first term. In the second box is not 7x, okay? It's actually 12, okay? Positive 12, because that's that C number, okay? Because those two are really the ones that I'm more worried about. And then I'm going to call this third column here, or this third, yeah, this whole thing is my check column, okay? And that has to do with the middle term, okay? So 7x, okay? So I hope you see that. It goes first term, last term, middle term, okay, all across the first row, okay? So that's how you start the tic-tac-toe board, all right? So what we're wondering, again, the big question with factoring is, I want these 2 groups to multiply back. If I like FOILed them and redistributed them, I want it to end up like this as an answer, okay? And so what I have to do is I have to ask myself, okay, what are 2 numbers, right, that are going to multiply, or what 2 things multiply to give me x squared? And that's tricky, right? These are almost always going to have an x involved with them because, right, x times x is x squared, okay? And we know that. But the big thing here is I figure out this middle group, and this is where my signs come in too, okay? Because I know this is a positive 12, okay? And I also know these signs are two pluses, so I can write those in there, okay? Because that tells me what sign these second values are going to be in here, okay? So my big challenge is figuring out what times what equals 12 and all my factors, okay? This is what I want to figure out. So my factors of 12, okay, this is the big challenge, okay? I want them to multiply to give me 12, okay? But I also want two numbers that are going to add to give me 7 when I add them, okay? So if I think, what are all the numbers that multiply to get 12? That would be 1 times 12 is 12, 2 times 6 is 12, 3 times 4 is 12, okay? And again, if you're not great with times tables, you can use a calculator, but for this one, I'm going to go, okay, 3 and 4, right? 3 times 4 is 12, okay? But here's my check. I can't just go with those two numbers because they're factors of 12. I have to use my check column. And here's what I would do. I multiply across here, okay? I multiply across. So I would say, okay, x times 3, well, that's just 3x, right? X times 3 is just 3x. And then x times 4 across the bottom here, x times 4 is just 4x. Okay, now here's my check. Okay, here's my check to make sure that it works. Okay, obviously these two numbers multiply to give me positive 12. Okay, but what I want to check here is, does 4x plus 3x equal 7x? My answer up here. 4x plus 3x does give me 7x, right? Wonderful. And when that happens, when you do find a combination that both multiplies here, and then adds here, you are good. You are set. You found your pair of numbers. Okay, now here's the deal. Your groups, your pairs in here are going to be on the diagonal. Okay, there we go. So my two combinations of numbers, my two pairs in here are going to be x plus 4 and then x plus 3. Okay, that is my answer. That is my answer to this. Okay, that is my answer to this. Okay, x plus 4 times x plus 3. Again, getting it from those two diagonals. Okay, let me go through one more problem with you, a little bit more simply, and then I'll do a whole nother video on just a bunch of more examples if you need it. Okay, so stay with me. Here's number 2, and here's a reason why I love the tic-tac-toe strategy. Okay, and you're in Algebra 2 now, and so you might have learned in Algebra 1 a strategy different from what I'm teaching you here. Okay, and if you are solid with that strategy, I want you to keep using that one, okay, if this is confusing. But give this one a chance, because this strategy not only is helpful in solving the easy ones, like the first one I did was a pretty easy factoring problem. This would be actually pretty difficult to do if you were doing a different factoring strategy, okay? But with tic-tac-toe, it's actually not that much harder, which is why I'm using this, okay? You can use this strategy for the easy ones and the hard ones, and it's just about the same, okay? So it's worth it to me to take the time to learn this, because it can be a little bit confusing what happens in here at first. But take the time and learn the process, and I promise it'll be easier for you in the long run, okay? So again, that process just starts with writing these terms across the top, okay, but not right in order. 3x squared in this first one, okay? Again, negative 8, my last term in this one, and then my check column is the middle term, the negative 2x, okay? So that's how my three terms go. That's how my three terms go across the top here, okay? And again, what I want to look for here first, before I write anything, is my sign, okay, my C sign. And this C sign is negative. And again, remember from what I told you before, a negative C sign means that this is going to be, one of these groups is going to be a plus, one of these groups is going to be a minus, okay? So now, what I can do is, again, I'm going to start to fill in these boxes, okay, and I want to start with this 3x squared. So I'm thinking, okay, what two terms are going to multiply to give me 3x squared? Okay, and you start with the coefficient 3. And it's like, okay, the only things that multiply to get 3 would be 3 times 1, right? 3 times 1. And then x squared, again, we know that x squared, well, that's just x times x, right? So you know that it's going to be 3x times 1x to give you 3x squared, okay? So that's what's nice about this, is that it's going to be 3x and 1x in there, okay? And so now I want to look at this and I think, okay, negative 8. what are two numbers that multiply to give me -8? Okay, and so you look at -8, and again, well, you first just think 8. What multiplies to give me 8? Well, that will be 1 times 8 and 2 times 4, right? Those two pairs give me 8. But what's tricky is with a negative, right? You could say -1 times 8, but couldn't you also say 1 times -8, right? And same with this. You could say -2 times 4 or 2 times -4. So there's kind of more possibilities to consider there, okay? But again, our signs are helpful. We know that one's going to be a plus and one's going to be a minus. We kind of knew that already, okay? So, but here's kind of where it's like piecing together a puzzle, okay? I want to fill in these boxes, okay, because I want my check. I want these, right? Because I'm going to multiply 3x times this number to give me this, and then 1x times this to give me that, okay? So I'm going to multiply across the side here, okay? And again, with my goal of getting these two to add to -2x. Okay, so watch. I'm just going to pick a pair. I'm just going to go with -1 and 8, my first pair there. Okay. So if we pick that, again, what we do if we're going with a pair is we just multiply across the side here. Okay, so I'll go 3x times -1 would give me -3x. And then I would go the second one, 1x times 8 would give me 8x. And so what you do from here, so this right now might be our pair of our two groups here, okay? But I have to check myself, okay? I have to see, okay, does 8x, if I add up the top here, does 8x plus -3x equal -2x? No, 8 plus -3 would be +5, okay? So that means that that pair did not work. Okay, I have to pick another pair. And let's go -2 and +4. Okay, so -2 and +4. Okay, so let's multiply these. 3x times -2 would be -6x. Okay, and then 1x and +4. If I multiply 1x times 4, I would get +4x. And now look, 4x plus -6x. 4 plus -6. There we go. Boom. I found it right there. Okay. 4x plus -6x is -2x. So here we go. I found it. My check checked out, right? And so I have my two pairs of terms right here. So again, it's the diagonals. When I find a good check, I go with the diagonals. So my one group is going to be 3x and +4 plus 4. Okay, so 3x and +4. Okay, and my second group is the other diagonal, 1x and -2 or -2. Okay, and so that is my pair. That's my two groups, my two binomials. Okay, so I just wanted to walk you through that process a little bit. I know it can be a little bit confusing, a little tricky because it's new, but I hope it makes sense. Again, getting an answer like that, but I'm going to put another video up of just walking through maybe like 4 or 5 more problems. So don't worry, you'll have lots of examples to watch and hopefully start to get the idea. But I hope that makes sense. Thanks for watching. Great job.